Hello, welcome to this YouTube on the Dhammapada, chapter 5, verse 3, and that's verse 62 in the consecutive straight-through numbering. I'll call up the text. Here we are. Puttamatti dhanammatti iti balo vihanyati attahi attanonatti kutu putta kutu dhanam. And again, puttamatti dhanammatti iti balo vihanyati attahi attanonatti kutu putta kutu dhanam. Putta, plural of putto, stem form putta. Let me go to the iPad. There we are. Putta. That's the equivalent of the Sanskrit putra, as in the river, the Brahmaputra. So putta, stem form of son, nominative plural, putta. Putta matti. That is an abbreviated form from me atti. So it would be putta me atti. This enclitic abbreviated form, it can only come immediately following a verb. It's tacked on to the end. It can never start a word group or a sentence. If you wanted to put it in its full form, it means of me or to me. If you wanted to put it in its full form, mama, of me. So you could say equally correct, mama putta of me, sons there are, meaning I have sons. So mama putta atti in the full form, or putta me atti, sons to me are, I have sons, or you can then drop the vowel of me, putta matti, I have sons. From the atti, from the root us, to be, the Sanskrit, it's asti, in Pali, atti, and the plural, santi, and Pali also the plural, santi. The plural santi could have been used here. The singular is used, atti is singular, asti Sanskrit, atti Pali. The singular may be used even with a plural noun, where the meaning is that they exist, there are, like the French il y a and the Spanish hay, which don't change for singular and plural. So just bear in mind it's a slight anomaly, but it's regularly used. The singular atti when it refers to a plural noun, where the meaning is they exist. So literally, there exist sons to me. I have sons. Dhanam, wealth. Dhanam matti. This is the same construction. Dhanam me atti, wealth to me is, meaning I have wealth. I have sons, I have wealth. Iti balo vihanyati. The use of iti here, so let me call the text back up. Come on, text. Puttamati dhanamati iti balo vihanyati. Iti, we know means literally thus, and it's used in the sense of unquote. And here it's, yes, it is unquote, but also a little bit more than that. And it indicates the reason, like the psychological reason for thinking that, or because he thinks that, so and so happens. So thinking, I have sons, I have wealth, the balo, the fool, vihanyati, torments himself and beats himself up. So it could also be construed to mean because he goes around thinking, I have sons, I have wealth, because he goes around thinking that, he beats himself up. So it could be a straight unquote, I have sons, I have wealth, unquote. The fool beats himself up. But it's more, he beats himself up because that's what he's thinking. That's how he's deluding himself, that he has sons, he has wealth. So the balu is the fool. Vihanyati. Let me go back to iPad. Very frequent and much used root han, meaning to beat, and then by extension to kill. And it makes its past participle hatta. You'd expect to see hanta, but the end drops out and the past participle becomes hatta, which that incidentally is cognate with our English word to hit. They come from the same root. So with the prefix vi, vihan, literally to strike apart, beat apart. It's rather like in English, we say beating himself up. And then generally just means tormenting himself, either physically or mentally, getting into a mental turmoil, whipping himself up. Vihanyati. Now, let's make the passive from this. Vihan. Make insert the ya to make the passive stem. Vihanyati. Which by standard phonetic mutation becomes vihanyati. An N followed by a Y with a vowel on each side almost always becomes a double nya in Pali. For example, the word for other, anya, just written as anya in Sanskrit. And that becomes anya in Pali. Note that vihanyat in the passive form in Sanskrit is like this. The passive formation with the ya, but it would have to take the atmanepada form, or the attanopada called in Pali, the atmanepada in Sanskrit. Note that the atmanepada endings, and we've recently discussed in one of these classes, they have almost disappeared from Pali. A few remnants remain, but note in particular that when you get a pure passive verb, as in vihanyati, I think it's right to say that the Atmanepada ending, or the Attanopada ending, the middle ending, does not occur with a pure passive. So here we have vihanyati, which would be wrong in Sanskrit. It's a passive, so you get the passive sign of the ya and the Atmane ending of the te. So vihanyate in Sanskrit, but vihanyati in Pali. Now to the second line. Oops. Attahi attano natti. The atta, meaning the self. We have anatta, for example, the doctrine of anatta, non-self. It's from the Sanskrit, well, the Vedic is Atman. This unending, sorry, I should give you the iPad. Listen, Atta and Atman. Atman, the unending becomes an A in Pali, so this is Sanskrit and this is Pali. Atman, it's this is the stem form. It's a consonantal stem, so the noun declensions are added straight onto the stem. So of oneself in Sanskrit is Atmana, Atmana, and in Pali it is Attano. So what is being said here is Attahi. Oops. Here we are. Attahi. He here means like even or indeed. So Attahi, your very self, or even yourself. You can say your very self, your own self. Attano nati, the very self is not of the self. In other words, it means your own self doesn't belong to you. So atta has this dual meaning of the atman, like a soul, also has the general meaning of oneself. So attahi attano natti, even yourself does not belong to yourself. Saying there is no self that you can own. The self itself is not of the self. The natti here, of course, is the na'atti. And in this context, it doesn't mean to exist, it just means is the self. It is not of the self, it does not belong to the self. So na'atti just is not, and that is that's shortened to natti, na'atti to natti. So attahi attano natti, the self itself is not of the self, or the very self, the very self does not belong to the self. Kuto putta, kuto dhanam. Kuto means whence, from where. So, and it's very often used in a rhetorical question to say, how could it possibly be so? Kuto, do you say that? How can you possibly say that? Kuto, from where? From where does this nonsense come? Kuto putta. So your very self doesn't belong to yourself. Kuto putta. So all the more so, how can you possibly say that the putta, your sons, belong to you? Kuto dhanam. If your own self doesn't belong to the self, kuto dhanam. How could it possibly be that you can say that you have dhanam that belongs to you? So I will read this again. Puttamatti dhanammatti iti balo vihanyati attahi attanonatti kuto putta kuto dhanam. And again, puttamatti dhanamatti iti balo vihanyati attahi attanonatti kuto putta kuto dhanam. That concludes this video.